We are going to discuss about overseas opportunities in real estate and migration programs. Um, you know, Thank you for joining despite the IPL final. Let me first address the elephant in the room. I hope this panel, makes it worth it for you. Needless to say that we have a lot of knowledge happening on this panel. We have some stalwarts on the panel. An appointment with any one of these would cost quite a bit of time and money for each one of you. So please make the most of this panel and ask as many questions as you would like to ask. But before I begin introducing everybody else, let me begin with a small introduction of my own self. So my name is Mona Chalota, and I represent a company known as Krypton Global Investments. It's one of India's leading niche boutique services company where we focus on, encouraging diversification into international markets, help our clients invest in pre-leased properties and luxury properties overseas, and help them also with citizenship via investment programs. Um, Today's agenda is to kind of make sense of the whole diversification trend that is going on in India and in all of the Indian wealth management talks and panels and shows that keep happening. People keep talking about diversification, let's diversify, how do we do it, etc., etc. And today's agenda is simply to bring some clarity to the process. Within this clarity, we are going to approach some of the two of our most popular markets, UK and USA. And as a surprise element, we also have Jules who will be representing the Southeast Asian markets. Southeast Asia is represented in India, but not as massively as UK and US is. Uh, I would consider that also to be a little bit of a niche market. So I'm hoping that Jules can throw some more light on that and, just make it more visible to all of us. Um, to answer most of your queries regarding the process on how to get about these markets. We have Kuntal, who's a leading international tax expert, and of course, I'll be making the formal introductions in a bit. And we also have Mark, who just represents everything legal or in any of these processes. So let's begin. Let me first begin by welcoming warmly Mr. Matthew Hogan, or Matt as we like to call him. Matt is the Vice President of Project Development for CMB. He oversees the CMB's team responsible for the identification of new opportunities, initial project underwriting, negotiating, and structuring of CMB's EB5 partnership loans. The CMB, for most of you who are familiar with it and for the ones who are not, is one of the leader in the EB5 investor visa program for over 20 years, helping investors from over 100 countries immigrate to the United States. Um, so that's Matt for you. Going forward, our next panelist is Mr. Nicholas Spencer, or Nick, as I like to call him. Nick is a senior business development manager for the Barclay Group, and he handles the Middle East and the India markets. Nick has been pivotal in maintaining relationships and facilitating the Barclay Group activity in Qatar, Turkey, and most recently India. He has extensive experience of over 10 years with London and the UK property market. And I'm really looking forward to Nick's views because most of the questions that came in pre-panel were all to do with the UK. So, Nick, you're going to have a busy time.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Jules K. And Jules. There's no short form for Jules, it's just Jules. So, Jules K joins us from Singapore. He is Southeast Asia's he represents PropertyGuru.com, which is Southeast Asia's most trusted property technology and leading prop tech company in 5 markets across Southeast Asia, namely Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. Uh, he's the managing director of Property Guru Group's industry leading Asia Property Awards and Events businesses. And of course, as I mentioned, that we are really looking forward to hearing Jules, views about the Southeast Asian market, and hopefully he will make it more visible for all of us, including the ones who are watching this panel. Um, so this is about the markets, what happens during the process. So when it comes to process, the two of the most important aspects to consider are the legal and tax. So to answer all your questions regarding the legalities of the process of investing overseas, we have Mark Davis. Dually qualified in the US and the UK, Mark Davis is the global managing partner and founder of Davies and Associates. He chairs the firm's investor visa group, which focuses on EB5, L1, and L2, EB5, L1, E2, and citizenship by investment, and other business and investor solutions. A former general counsel, Mark is relied on as a primary counsel to corporations, investors, nonprofits, and businesses of all sizes. So we are really lucky to have you here, Mark. Welcome to the panel. Um, Last but not the least is my dear friend Kuntal, who probably has to work the hardest in any transaction that happens in the overseas market. Kuntal Dave, and Kuntal as I call him, represents Nanubhai Desai and Company. He's an experienced chartered accountant with over 30 years of experience in the matters of corporate finance, advising clients on tax, attestation, foreign exchange, and valuation matters. He's actively involved in assisting and advising clients on various aspects of cross-border transactions and with international taxes, commercial laws, regulatory compliances. He advises MNEs, family offices, HNIs, and philanthropies. So Kuntal, welcome to the panel as well. Looking forward to you shedding some light on how and what should one consider on the tax aspect. So this is our panel, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll begin by the most in news item right now, which is the U.S. presidency election, and the new president has been elected. And Matt, there is a lot of curiosity in India as to how that is going to affect the immigration laws for Indians. Are we going to see any changes in the EB5 program? Are there some major announcements we can expect? So over to you, Matt. Can you throw some light on the current situation?
Sure, absolutely. Obviously, right now, Joe Biden has been projected to be the president of the United States, and I think a lot of people around the world have seen President Trump's tweets and his skepticism over the election. But I think at this point, it's pretty clear that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. And the question that you raise is a good one. But I will say this, that over the years, EB5 has garnered wide bipartisan support. And because at its base and at its core, it's a job creation program for the United States. Now, obviously, it's the immigration by investment vehicle for the United States. It allows foreign national to be able to earn a green card, but it's a job creation driver and an economic stimulator for the United States. And so there's very few people that actually oppose the program. And in most cases, I think you see both Republicans and Democrats in the United States showing widespread support for the EB5 program. And so, I think it's unlikely that you'll see major changes to the EB5 program. Right now, there's, an impending sunset date. The program is set to end on December 11th. I think it's likely that you'll see another extension of this program. And there's also ongoing discussions about a longer term reauthorization for the program that will come with some minor changes that are meant to increase the integrity of the program, create safeguards for investors, and a little bit more transparency for the program for the U.S. government to be able to evaluate the cases and the players involved in all of the regional center transactions. And so I think those are all good things for the program at the end of the day. In terms of immigration policy, Joe Biden has already come out and said that he's going to reverse a lot of the executive orders that Donald Trump has put out regarding travel bans and things like that. None of those impact India right now. And even the executive orders that limited immigration into the United States under President Trump left EB5 exempt. And so I think it's clear that he saw the merits of the program. He saw the positive impact that the program can create. And so, I think as it was with President Trump, EB5 was left largely unchanged in terms of, his presidential authority. I think you'll see the same thing with President Biden when he takes office in January.
One of the questions that I keep getting asked, and which was one of the pre-questions for the panel as well, is there any way, are we expecting the 900,000 minimum quantum of investment to kind of roll back and become like the previous investment of 5? Could that happen?
No, I think that effort to increase the investment amount for the program was supported by both parties. When the program was originally set up back in 1990, it was anticipated that they would be indexing the program for inflation along the way. And they just never did do that. And so these most recent changes that you saw in November of last year to raise the investment dollars or the minimum investment from 500 to 900, it was widely supported by both parties. I think they saw a need to increase that investment amount. And frankly, the EB-5 program at 900,000 US dollars is still one of the most affordable immigration by investment programs in the world. And I think it's one of the most high demand immigration by investment programs around the world. And so I think it's very unlikely that you'll see that go back to 500,000.
Matt, some of the few questions, in fact, are for you. Uh, some of these are basic questions, and I think we do need to have another seminar totally focused on EB-5 because a lot of questions are coming in, simplistic questions to more complex ones. I'll just read out a couple of them to you. The green card processing time, is it going to be 15 months and lesser, or is 15 months going to be the standard, or does an Indian still need to wait 3-4 years for the green card? That is the first question.
Yeah, and good question. And as I mentioned earlier, we saw a petition approved in as little as 15 months earlier, and they've ranged wildly over the last couple of years. The posted processing times, I think now are still over 4 years, and that'd be the short end of the processing times. It's difficult to tell how those processing times will move. I think most regional centers will tell you, and most immigration attorneys will tell you that, that the regional centers that have a little bit better track record, that have kind of been through the process before, that put together a petition that the USCIS is familiar with, probably run a better chance at seeing shorter processing times. And so we've certainly seen that over the years in that, we've been able to benefit from that in that we've seen shorter processing times, but it's not to say that we don't have some outliers where it takes, closer towards those standard processing times. I guess the answer I'm providing is probably a little bit convoluted, but the reality of the situation is that, the regional centers themselves, the immigration attorneys, don't have much control over that adjudicating process. And unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of visibility into that process either. So I think what we'll see over the next few years is, kind of a mixed bag, some that are coming in a little bit quicker, some that are coming in a little closer to those standard processing times.
Okay, the second question is for Matt and Mark both together. It's addressed to both of you. It says that what if somebody has applied for EB-5 and gets the green card? Does it allow the principal applicant and the family to go and live in the US immediately? And can they pick up a job on a green card if in the interim till they get their citizenship? So.
Yeah, short answer is yes. As soon as they're awarded now what happens is there's an initial approval phase, and during that initial approval, the family's given what's called a conditional green card. And as soon as they have that conditional green card, they have the ability to move to the United States. They can live anywhere, they can work anywhere. It gives them essentially all the same rights as any normal US citizen, except for they can't vote and they don't have a US passport. They need to establish a residency there, and they remain there for 2 years. And at the end of that 2-year period, that's when they go to the final petition stage with the US government, where they're actually showing the USCIS that the jobs were created through their EB-5 investment, they maintained their investment, it was at risk, and so on and so forth. And that's when the conditions are removed from that green card and it becomes a permanent green card.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.